The alien fleet descended upon Earth like a storm, blotting out the sun and casting an unnatural shadow over the planet. From the moment the first ship broke through the atmosphere, the people of Earth knew they were facing an enemy unlike any other. The ships were massive, colossal, dark silhouettes in the sky, bristling with weapons that made the Earth's greatest military forces seem like toys. The ground trembled as the first impacts came, energy blasts carving through cities and military installations alike. Within hours, Earth's most powerful defenses were little more than rubble, and panic spread faster than the firestorms ignited by the alien weapons. The invaders, known as the Jathari, were a technologically superior species, their fleet stretching across the sky like a vast, ominous shadow. They moved with methodical precision, their weapons cutting down the Earth's defenses as though they were little more than paper. The humans watched in horror as their cities were decimated, their lives upended by an unstoppable force from beyond the stars. For the first time in history, humanity was faced with the terrifying realization that they might not be alone in the universe. The aliens were no peaceful visitors. They came with a simple message, broadcasted across every communication channel on Earth: surrender or be destroyed. World leaders, desperate to save their people, gathered for an emergency summit. But the debates that followed were filled with uncertainty and fear. There were no good options. The human race was too divided, too scattered. Their military was powerful, yes, but no match for the Jathari's advanced technology. The message from the invaders was clear. They had no interest in peace. Their demands were simple: surrender, and Earth would be spared. It didn't take long for many to agree. Amid the chaos, the first whispers of capitulation began to spread. Governments that had once been at odds now rallied together under a single banner. Yet, deep within the hearts of the Earth's leaders, a sense of shame and hopelessness took root. And then came Sarah Matthews, a woman who had spent her life studying the art of war, a former military strategist turned rogue leader of Earth's underground resistance. Sarah was a woman who had stared death in the face and had learned not to blink. She watched the world's leaders bicker, paralyzed by fear, and knew they were missing the one thing that had kept humanity alive throughout its history: resilience. "We are not weak," Sarah said, standing in front of a handful of military leaders and scientists in a covert underground base, the last refuge of Earth's resistance. "We might not have their weapons, but we have something they don't: adaptability. We're unpredictable. We've survived wars before, and we can survive this one." At first, many of the leaders around the table were skeptical. The Jath were too powerful, their ships too advanced. Earth had no chance. But Sarah's voice was a force, sharp and cutting through the doubt like a blade. She spoke with a calm certainty that inspired the room to listen. "We need to fight on our terms," she said. "We'll use their arrogance against them. We don't need to fight them head-on. We'll strike where they least expect it." Her plan was bold and audacious. The Jathari, confident in their technological superiority, believed Earth was a primitive world, unworthy of serious resistance. They would leave their ships vulnerable, relying on their advanced systems to maintain order. The humans, with their limited resources, would instead exploit the one thing the invaders couldn't anticipate: their own overconfidence. Sarah's plan was simple: infiltrate the alien supply lines, disrupt their communications, and create chaos within their fleet. Divide and conquer. Strike where the Jathari felt secure. The aliens had never seen humans fight like this before, and once they were disoriented, once the Jathari felt the first taste of failure, humanity would take the offensive. The first strike came when Sarah's team trained soldiers, engineers, and hackers launched an attack on a Jathari communications relay located deep within the remains of New York City. The humans had learned to adapt their tactics, using the remnants of their own technology and the alien tech they'd scavenged. They had no choice but to work with what they had. The city was still smoldering from the alien assault, abandoned and in ruins. The Jathari held the city under tight control, their patrols sweeping the streets, looking for survivors. But Sarah's resistance had grown in strength. They moved in silence, their boots light on the scorched earth, their weapons whispering death as they took down patrol after patrol, leaving no trace of their presence. The mission was dangerous. It had to be. They were sending a message, not just to the Jathari, but to the world. Humanity would not surrender. The communication relay was their first target, and once it was disabled, Earth would be in a position to disrupt the alien command structure. The team fought through the streets, moving from cover to cover, until they reached the Jathari relay. It was heavily guarded, protected by an energy shield, and surrounded by alien sentries. But Sarah had planned for this. She had studied the Jathari's weaknesses, their reliance on central command systems, and how they had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt to their technology. They had taken their time, studying the alien systems, learning how they worked. The battle was brief, but intense. Jathari soldiers fell, one by one, as the resistance made their move, disabling the shield and planting explosive charges that would disable the communication relay. The Jathari had no time to react. Within minutes, their command structure had been cut off from their fleet. "We've done it, Markson," Sarah's second in command breathed. "The relay's down." "Good," Sarah replied, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Let's get out before they realize what we've done." The team moved quickly, covering their tracks and retreating to the extraction point. The success was sweet, but Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The Jathari would retaliate. They always did. But they had a crack in their armor now, and that crack would spread. The Jathari, still confident in their overwhelming superiority, had no idea what was coming. Their arrogance was their greatest weakness. Sarah Matthews and her resistance knew it. The first strike had been a success, but the war was far from over. In the days that followed, Earth's forces continued their guerrilla tactics, targeting the alien fleets, supply depots, and key communication centers. The Jathari retaliated with brutal force, but each attack by humanity was another victory. The more they disrupted the alien systems, the more the Jathari began to falter. Their supply lines were stretched thin, their resources dwindling, and yet, the invaders still believed that humanity was fragile, that their defeat was inevitable. They were wrong. Sarah had learned one key thing from the resistance. Earth was not some weak, helpless planet ready to be conquered. The humans fought not just for survival, but for the very soul of their species. The Jathari had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back, and now they would learn the truth. The question was no longer if humanity would win, but how long it would take for the Jathari to realize they had made the worst mistake of their lives. The days following the successful strike on the alien communication relay were tense. The damage had been done, but the price of their victory was steep. Sarah Matthews and her team had managed to cripple a vital piece of the Jathari war machine, but they had also drawn the ire of the invaders. It was only a matter of time before they retaliated, and Sarah knew that each passing moment brought them closer to another confrontation. As the alien forces regrouped, Earth's scattered resistance groups continued to wreak havoc. The alien fleet had underestimated humanity's resourcefulness. They thought that by destroying the world's cities and dismantling its military infrastructure, they would break the spirit of the humans. They were wrong. Instead of breaking, humanity adapted. What the Jathari saw as defeat, Sarah saw as an opportunity. They couldn't beat the aliens in a head-on battle, but they could make them pay for every inch they took. The strike on the Jathari relay had been just the beginning. While the aliens focused on re-establishing their communications, the resistance kept up the pressure. They launched coordinated attacks on the Jathari supply depots hidden in the mountains, downed alien drones patrolling the skies, and sabotaged the alien technology they'd captured, making sure it could never be used again. Each attack was carefully planned, each move calculated. The The resistance was small, but their spirit was indomitable. They would bleed the invaders, slowly and painfully, until they had no choice but to retreat. But despite the humans' ingenuity and fierce will to survive, Sarah knew that the Overlord's forces were still too strong. Even with their communications disrupted and their supply lines weakened, the Jathari were far from defeated. They would come for Earth again stronger, angrier, and more determined than ever. "This isn't enough," Sarah Markson said, his voice heavy with frustration, as they sat around a small table in their underground base. A map of Earth's battlefields sprawled across the surface. "We've been playing defense for too long. The Jathari will come after us in force. We need something more, something decisive." Sarah's fingers tapped against the map, her mind already working through the possibilities. She knew he was right. The small skirmishes they'd been winning were important, but they were only delaying the inevitable. The Jathari were an empire that had conquered countless worlds before Earth. It wasn't just their technology that made them dangerous. It was their sheer determination to maintain control. But there was one thing Sarah had learned over the last few months. Humanity had something the Jathari couldn't account for: the ability to fight back when all seemed lost. "We need to hit them hard." Sarah's voice was firm, her resolve as sharp as ever. "We need to make them fear us." Markson leaned forward. "How?" "You're talking about a full-scale assault. They've got us outgunned and outmanned. We're going to do what we do best," Sarah replied, her eyes glinting with determination. "We're going to make them think they're winning. And then, when they let their guard down, we'll strike." The plan was simple, too simple, perhaps, but Sarah knew that simplicity often worked best against an enemy that overestimated its power. The Jathari had already made a grave mistake by underestimating humanity, and now they were going to pay for it. The strategy was bold. They would create a decoy, make the Jathari believe that Earth was crumbling under the weight of their invasion, and then, when the alien fleet focused all its resources on what it thought was humanity's last stand, they would hit the real target. The decoy would be a series of false resistance bases, scattered across the world, making it seem as if the last remaining human forces were holed up in various locations, ready to make a final, desperate stand. The Jathari, arrogant in their superiority, would be drawn in by the feint, believing that the humans were cornered and ready to surrender. But that was exactly what humanity wanted. Meanwhile, the real human forces armed with reverse-engineered Jathari tech would strike at the heart of the alien fleet, using guerrilla tactics and surprise to tear through the alien defenses. Sarah and her team would be on the front lines of the assault, making sure the aliens knew exactly who was standing in their way. "We're going to give them a fight they've never seen before," Sarah said, turning to the map once more. "We've already taken their communication down once. Now, we take their fleet down piece by piece." The decoy stations were set. Resistance groups from across the world worked quickly to set up the false bases, each one fortified and made to look as though humanity was preparing for a last-ditch defense. To the Jathari, it looked like the final act of a species about to be crushed underfoot. Their fleet massed in orbit, ready to deal the final blow. On the ground, Sarah's team moved swiftly, sabotaging the alien ships and communication relays. That would allow the Jathari to coordinate their assault. The humans knew that once the attack began, there would be no turning back. They were all in now. The first part of the plan was a success. The Jathari fleet descended on the decoy stations with overwhelming force. The decoys drew the aliens in, just as Sarah had predicted. The false bases fell under fire, and the humans, pretending to be desperate, put up a token resistance before retreating to the next location. The Jathari commanders, believing they were winning, pushed forward without hesitation. But what they didn't know was that they had left their flanks wide open. That's when the real strike began. The humans had already infiltrated the Jathari's outer fleet's maw, fast ships that had been equipped with stolen alien weapons. As the Jathari concentrated their fire on the decoy stations, Sarah's resistance forces launched their surprise attack, attacking from the shadows. The first ship fell in flames as a human-made EMP pulse disabled its engines, causing it to plummet into the vast emptiness of space. The second alien ship exploded seconds later when a team of resistance fighters, using alien plasma grenades, breached its hull. It wasn't much, just a small victory, but it sent a powerful message to the Jathari. The resistance forces, now acting like ghosts in the night, sabotaged every alien ship they could find. They struck at supply lines, destroyed energy shields, and caused massive disruptions in the Jathari's fleet-wide communications. The aliens scrambled to regain control, but the more they tried to respond, the worse things got. They're in chaos, Markson shouted, a grin spreading across his face as he watched the destruction unfold on the communications screen. It's working. They've lost control of half their fleet. Sarah didn't smile. This is just the beginning. Keep pushing. Don't let them regroup. As the final phase of their plan unfolded, the human fleet, now bolstered by the decoys, Success, began to launch a full-scale offensive on the Jathari flagship, the heart of their military might. The battle in the skies was intense, the sound of explosions and energy blasts filling the vacuum of space as both sides fought for control. But humanity was more than a match for the overconfident aliens. Sarah's team, along with a group of elite soldiers, infiltrated the flagship, bypassing security and making their way to the core of the alien vessel. The Jathari had no idea what was coming. The humans breached the command center and quickly took control of the flagship's weapons, turning them against the invaders. Within hours, the Jathari flagship was in flames, its once unbeaten commander now struggling to maintain control. The alien invasion was falling apart. The battlefield had shifted, and the Jathari were beginning to realize their mistake. The once mighty fleet, a symbol of invincibility, was now scattered across the stars, crippled by an enemy they had thought beneath them. The humans, who had once seemed like weaklings on the edge of extinction, were now proving themselves capable of outwitting the invaders at every turn. The Overlord, a towering figure whose presence once commanded the galaxy, stood in the command center of his flagship, his face etched with frustration. He had underestimated humanity, and now he was paying the price. "How is this possible?" he snarled, his voice low and full of rage as he addressed his generals. "These humans, they cannot be this strong." A tall, armored Jathari general stepped forward, his glowing eyes dimming slightly in the shadow of his commander's wrath. "My lord, the humans are proving to be more resourceful than we anticipated. They have adapted quickly, using our own technology against us. The resistance movements are spreading across the planet, and Earth's military is starting to regroup." "I ordered them to be crushed," the Overlord roared. "You told me that their military was weak, their technology inferior. Now we are the ones scrambling to recover from a few skirmishes." The general hesitated, his posture stiff. "The humans are unpredictable, my lord. They fight with an intensity that we have not seen before. They are not the primitive species we believed them to be." The Overlord turned away, staring out into the void of space, his mind working furiously. For the first time in his life, he was faced with an enemy that refused to be cowed, an enemy that fought back in ways he had not planned for. The Jathari had conquered countless worlds before Earth, but they had never faced a species like this. The humans were small, weak, but they had something that made them dangerous, a will to survive that no force in the universe could crush, and the Overlord was beginning to understand just how costly that mistake would be. "Prepare reinforcements." His voice was cold, and his decision was final. "The humans will not escape their fate. Send for the fleet from Valtoris. If the humans want a fight, we will give them one they will never forget." Back on Earth, Sarah Matthews and her resistance team knew that their victory was only temporary. The Jathari had been caught off guard, but they would come back, stronger and more prepared. The Jathari had sent for reinforcements, and they were coming in full force. Sarah's next move was crucial. She couldn't afford to wait until the aliens had regained their strength. The time to act was now. The resistance, emboldened by their recent successes, worked quickly to prepare for the next phase. The damage they had inflicted on the Jathari was significant, but Sarah understood that in war, no victory was permanent until the enemy was utterly defeated. The Jathari were regrouping, but their hubris had cost them dearly. Sarah intended to make sure it cost them even more. "We need to hit them while they're still reeling," Sarah said, standing before a map of the alien fleet's movements. The map flickered, showing Jathari ships shifting their positions and regrouping. The Resistance, armed with alien technology and human ingenuity, had already set their sights on 3 critical alien supply stations that were key to the Jathari's remaining operational capacity. If they could disable these before reinforcements arrived, they might stand a chance at forcing the invaders to rethink their plans. Markson, her second in command, was already reviewing the intel. "These stations are too well guarded," he said. "We'll never be able to infiltrate them without losing too many men. We need a distraction." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "That's exactly what we'll give them. We'll give them a fight they'll think they can win, and when they move in to crush us, we'll hit their supply lines." The plan was deceptively simple. The Resistance would create a false sense of vulnerability, pretending to be on the brink of collapse. The Jathari, still too blinded by their own arrogance, would send their fleet in to wipe out the last remnants of Earth's forces. But that was the trap. When they did, humanity's real forces would strike. "We'll give them a show," Sarah said with a wicked smile. "Let them think they're about to wipe us out. Then we'll show them what happens when you push a cornered human." The plan was set into motion. The Resistance began broadcasting decoy transmissions to the Jathari fleet, making it appear as if they were assembling their forces for one last desperate battle. The false signals drew the Jathari in, and the alien fleet, eager to finish the job they had started, began to move toward Earth's last stronghold. Meanwhile, Sarah's team, along with a small fleet of human ships, prepared to strike. They had advanced alien technology, thanks to the victories they'd already secured. They had energy weapons, stealth ships, and EMP devices that could disable even the most sophisticated of the Jathari ships. The trap was set, and the Jathari were walking straight into it. As the Jathari fleet approached, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. They had one shot at this. If they failed, Earth would be finished. The fate of humanity rested on this one attack. The alien ships neared the false Resistance base, unaware that they were being led straight into the heart of the trap. Sarah, her mind focused, signaled her team to prepare. They would fight back, with everything they had, and more. As the Jathari fleet moved in, Sarah's heart raced. This was the moment she had been preparing for. The Resistance had given everything they had. They had no more cards to play. As the Jathari ships descended upon the base, Sarah activated the EMP pulse. A wave of energy rippled out from Earth's surface, disabling the alien ships' power grids and rendering their systems vulnerable. Chaos erupted. The Jathari, caught by surprise, scrambled to regain control of their ships. It was too late. The human fleet, hidden until now, emerged from the shadows, attacking the alien ships with precision and ferocity. Earth's forces, using their captured Jathari weapons, tore through the invaders' ranks, disabling ship after ship. The Jathari had no time to react. Their fleet, once mighty and invincible, was now a shadow of its former self. "We've got them on the ropes," Markson shouted, his voice full of excitement and disbelief. Sarah nodded, but her expression remained hard. "Don't get cocky. We're not done yet." The final phase of the battle was underway. Sarah and her team moved into position, preparing to launch a direct attack on the Jathari flagship. The Overlord, who had once thought of humanity as little more than an insect to be crushed, was about to learn just how wrong he was. The battle for Earth had escalated to a level no one had anticipated. The Jathari, once confident in their superiority, had found themselves in a nightmare. The humans, small and insignificant in their eyes, were now proving to be a threat they could not dismiss. The Jathari fleet, once a well-oiled machine of war, was in disarray. Their ships lay crippled in the void, their communication lines severed, and their confidence shattered. And the Overlord, their once imposing leader, had begun to feel the weight of his arrogance. The Jathari had thought the humans would crumble after the initial assault. They thought Earth's military, divided and broken, would cower in fear, but the resistance led by Sarah Matthews had turned the tide, proving that the strength of the human spirit could not be easily defeated. Despite the alien fleet's best efforts, the humans had adapted faster than expected. Now, Sarah and her team had a single mission: to take down the Jathari Overlord, the architect of the invasion. He had ordered the death of millions, and his empire had cast a dark shadow over Earth's future. If they could destroy him, the alien forces would collapse without their leader. The final battle would decide the fate of the planet. Sarah stood on the bridge of the flagship, her eyes scanning the holographic displays as they tracked the alien fleet. The Jathari had regrouped, but they were no longer the unstoppable force they once were. Earth's resistance, now united under a single banner, had managed to destroy key elements of the alien military, and Sarah had a plan to finish it. They had one shot to bring down the Overlord, and if they succeeded, the war would be over. "We're running out of time," Markson said, his voice tense. "The Overlord's fleet is pulling back. They're retreating to their command ship. If we don't take it down now, we might never get another chance." Sarah nodded, her fingers tapping against the console in front of her. "We have to hit them fast, before they can regroup. Their flagship is the heart of their fleet. If we can take it out, we destroy the rest." The plan was set. The resistance would launch a coordinated assault on the Jathari flagship. The alien ship was heavily protected, but the humans had a few tricks up their sleeves, namely, the stolen alien technology they had repurposed during their earlier attacks. The plan would require a two-pronged assault. One team would infiltrate the flagship and take control of its power systems, while the other would launch a diversion to draw the alien forces away from the ship's vulnerable side. "We can do this," Sarah said, her eyes steely with determination. "We hit them hard, take down their shields, and push through their defenses. Markson, you're with me on the ground team. We're going in." Markson's lips twitched into a grin. "You know I'm ready." The Jathari flagship loomed large before them, its dark form like a silent predator waiting in the shadows. The human forces, led by Sarah, approached the ship, under the cover of a decoy strike, launching a barrage of firepower that distracted the alien forces long enough to slip past their defenses. The alien fleet responded to the diversion, redirecting their attention to the false assault as Sarah's team made their way toward the heart of the flagship. As they boarded the flagship, the crew remained silent, moving with calculated precision. Sarah and Markson led the charge, infiltrating the lower levels of the ship. They had no time to waste. The Overlord's ship was a fortress reinforced by advanced energy shields and heavily guarded. Every step they took felt like an eternity, knowing that the fate of Earth lay in the balance. They made their way to the central command room, where the Overlord was rumored to be coordinating his fleet. The alien soldiers guarding the area were formidable, but the humans had come prepared. The team used their hacked alien tech to disable the shields and stun the guards, opening the way for Sarah and Markson to press forward in the heart of the flagship. They found themselves standing before the Overlord's command center, a massive chamber filled with alien technology that hummed with power. The Overlord himself stood at the center of the room, his towering form visible through a wall of transparent glass. His cold alien eyes glowed with an eerie light as he turned to face the intruders. "So, You are the humans who think they can stop me. The Overlord's voice boomed, distorted by the alien tech surrounding him. You have fought well, but this is where your struggle ends. You cannot defeat an empire that has conquered 1,000 worlds. You are nothing. Sarah's gaze never wavered. She stepped forward, her hand resting on the weapon at her side. You're wrong, she said. You underestimated us. You underestimated humanity. And now, you're going to see what happens when you push us too far. The Overlord's expression twisted in fury. With a wave of his hand, alien soldiers appeared from the shadows, their weapons drawn. But Sarah was ready. With a swift motion, she activated a pulse disruptor, sending a wave of energy through the chamber that disabled the alien forces around her. Markson and the rest of the team moved quickly, taking down the remaining guards and securing the room. The Overlord's eyes narrowed, his anger palpable. You dare defy me? Sarah stepped closer, her voice steady. We dare because we can. This is where it ends. The final confrontation unfolded with the quiet intensity of a battle that had been a long time coming. The Overlord's power was formidable, but the humans had the advantage. They had adapted, learned from their mistakes, and used everything at their disposal to fight back. The alien leader was powerful, but he was not invincible. The tide of battle had already turned. With a final, decisive strike, Sarah disabled the Overlord's control center, the alien leader's last line of defense. As the alien flagship began to crumble around them, the Overlord let out a final roar of defiance before his body crumpled to the floor. Defeated, that the flagship was in chaos. The Jathari, leaderless and disorganized, tried to regroup, but it was too late. The human resistance had done what many thought was impossible. They had taken down the Overlord and disrupted the core of the Jathari's fleet. Earth's forces, now emboldened by this victory, launched their final push. As the alien ships began to retreat, the remaining resistance fighters moved in to mop up the remaining Jathari forces. The battle was over. Humanity had won. Against all odds, Earth had been freed. The silence after the final battle was deafening. The Jathari fleet, once a menacing force in the sky, was now a scattered memory of a failed invasion. The flagship, the heart of the alien empire's hold over Earth, now drifted lifeless in the vastness of space. The Overlord's defeat, marking the end of an era. The sounds of victory, the cheers and cries of Earth's survivors, rang in the hearts of those who had lived to see this day. But amidst the celebration, Sarah Matthews stood silent, her eyes staring out into the cosmos, lost in thought. The planet was saved, Earth was free, but at a great cost. Entire cities lay in ruins, millions had perished in the conflict, and much of humanity's infrastructure had been destroyed. The scars of war would remain for decades to come, but what had once seemed like a hopeless struggle had transformed into a resounding victory, one that would echo across the galaxy for eons. The Jathari, though defeated on Earth, were far from conquered. Sarah knew this. The Overlord's death was a blow to their morale, but the Jathari Empire was vast, stretching across countless star systems, and though their leader had fallen, the remnants of the alien fleet would retreat to lick their wounds and regroup. They would come again, perhaps not today, but eventually. However, Earth had shown them something the Jathari had never anticipated. Humans would never surrender. The invaders had come with firepower, arrogance, and confidence, only to be humbled by a species they had dismissed as insignificant. But humanity's greatest strength lay not in their technology, but in their spirit, a spirit that refused to bow to any power, no matter how great. Sarah's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. Markson, her trusted second in command, approached, his face grim but proud. We did it, Sarah, he said, his voice filled with both disbelief and relief. Sarah nodded, her eyes still fixed on the stars. We did, but the war's not over. We've beaten them here, but there's a whole galaxy out there, and the Jath won't forget what happened today. Markson looked at her, concern flickering in his eyes. What happens next? We've won, but at what cost? The world is broken. It is, Sarah replied, finally turning to face him. But the war isn't just about survival. It's about what comes after, what we build. We've earned a victory, but now we have to rebuild, not just our cities, but our future. Humanity will not let itself be crushed. They stood together in silence for a moment, absorbing the enormity of their situation. Earth was free, but the task ahead was monumental. Yet, in that moment, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. It was fragile, like the first light of dawn, but it was real. Humanity had made its stand and they had won. In the days that followed, Earth's leaders convened to discuss the future. There were no easy answers. The planet was a shell of its former self, its cities decimated, its population scarred, but humanity was alive, and that was more than they had expected. Sarah Matthews, once a strategist fighting from the shadows, was now the face of a new world, one that would rise from the ashes of war. Her leadership was more vital than ever. The world needed someone to guide them through the rebuilding process, to restore order and hope. But Sarah knew that the Jathari were not the only threat Earth would face in the years to come. Their victory had sent ripples across the galaxy, and other powers, some far more insidious than the Jathari, would notice humanity's defiance. "We need to prepare," Sarah said, her voice steady, but filled with the weight of responsibility. "The galaxy is vast, and there are many others who may want to test us. But this time, we won't be caught off guard. Earth is a force now." Weeks passed, and the human resistance now, an organized military force, began to take charge. Teams of engineers, soldiers, and scientists worked together to rebuild what had been destroyed. Using both Earth's resources and the alien technology they had captured, they reversed-engineered Gathari weapons, using them to bolster humanity's defenses and giving them a foothold in space they had never dreamed of before. The planet was slowly healing, but Sarah knew that the path to recovery would take time. The wounds of war, both physical and emotional, would take years, decades, even to mend. But humanity had proven something the universe could not ignore. They were not weak, and if anyone thought they could crush Earth again, they would have another thing coming. As the reconstruction efforts continued, Earth's military presence in space grew. The remains of the Jathari fleet had been scattered, but their technology had provided Earth with the means to defend itself and even explore the stars beyond. There was talk of forming an interstellar coalition of human-aligned planets, a force that could stand united against any future invaders. Sarah Matthews, now regarded as one of the heroes of the rebellion, was at the forefront of these efforts. She worked tirelessly, not just as a strategist, but as a symbol of Earth's resilience and unyielding will. Every victory, every small step toward recovery, was a reminder to the Jathari and any others who might come that humanity would not be so easily defeated. As the years passed, Earth began to rebuild, and its place in the galaxy began to change. Where once there was fear and doubt, now there was hope and determination. The humans had emerged from the ashes of war, stronger than ever, their resolve hardened by the trials they had faced. They had shown the galaxy that they would not be another conquered world, another forgotten species. They had fought and won, and they would continue to fight for their future. And as Sarah Matthews stood on the balcony of a new government building, looking out over the city that had been reborn, she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. Earth had survived. The Overlord was gone, and the invaders had been defeated. But Sarah knew that this was just the beginning. The real fight had always been about what came after the battle, and humanity, in all its flawed brilliance, was ready for it. The Jathari had asked for reinforcements. They had expected a quick victory, but what they got was a force of Deathworlders, a species that had faced extinction time and time again, emerged stronger for it. They had underestimated the humans. They had thought Earth would be an easy conquest, but they had learned the hard way that no one could ever conquer humanity's unbreakable spirit.